What up, everybody? InstructaBeats back here with some multiplying polynomials. And so this is one of the most basic things you guys are going to have to do in Math 1. And so that's why it's going to be part of our first couple lessons, and then you guys will have some morning work on it to kind of review. So first of all, we need to review the parts of an algebraic equation, right? And so we have two expressions, okay? So expressions are basically what would be on either side of the equal sign. So this here is an expression, and then this here is also an expression, okay? And they're separated by the equal sign. There you go. And so we know the letters are going to be variables, okay? We know that. We don't really have to talk about that. The coefficient is a number in front of the variable. So here we have a coefficient of, here we go, let me just do it this way. My handwriting's terrible. The 3, the 7, and then this 7 over here are all coefficients, all right? Constant, a constant is a number right here, okay? So that'd be a constant. Matter of fact, let me just erase the expression. And so part of knowing what's going on in algebra, right, is being able to break down the algebraic equation. And that's going to be important for your knowledge as you do stuff. So here is a constant, and then here is also another constant, okay? And those are numbers that do not have a variable attached to it. Now a term, okay, get my highlighter out here. Terms are could be a variable, could just be a constant, okay, could be a coefficient of a variable, but they're separated by an addition and subtraction sign. So here we have 4 terms in this equation, okay? We have 3 on this side and 2 on this side. So terms are things that are separated by addition subtraction signs, okay, things that are going to be groups, and then like terms are obviously like terms. Okay, so if you did our linear equation playlist, you'll know that when you are adding or you're trying to simplify equations, you're going to combine like terms. So like terms would be our constant. It could be our x's, okay, so these, or it could just be our 7y. Now the 7y doesn't have any like terms because there's no other y's. You can't combine a y and an x by adding or subtracting. Okay, you have to multiply those, so we don't consider those like terms. So that's a quick review. And then here we have a couple different things. So I'm just going to, oh, never mind. I have those over there to remind me what to say. So here we have 4 different expressions. Again, these are expressions because there's no equal sign. And when there's only one term, we would call this a monomial, okay? Or I don't really know. Monomial, yeah, monomial, okay? And that just means one term, right? The prefix mono means one. Binomial would be an expression with 2 terms. So here we would have binomial. Trinomial, okay, there we go, would obviously be, you have 3 terms here, okay, and again, terms are separated by the addition subtraction sign. And then the binomial, trinomial, and then this one, these are all considered polynomials. Poly means more than one, right? A lot. And so this is a binomial, but it's also a polynomial because there's more than one term. After trinomial, typically we just call anything with 4 or more a polynomial, okay? So the 2 you'd have to know is binomial and trinomial. Those are both polynomials, okay? Let me draw a little bracket. I don't draw brackets too well. They look like butts, so I just kind of squiggly line them. And then the monomial is not a polynomial, right, because there's only one. So it's important that you kind of know those terms because you're going to hear them a lot when you get into Math 1. And it's very simple to understand. You just look at the prefix, and that will help you out. So I had to burp. So to multiply polynomials, you're going to have to know a couple different things. Adding exponents when you multiply. That's why I just did the lesson on exponents. So if you did not do that one, please start with that. You have to understand the distributive property, and then you have to be able to, you are combining, or combing is what that look, combine, yeah, like terms, okay? So those are 3 skills you have to have. If you can do those 3 things, then this is actually pretty easy. So our distributive property simply says that whatever is on the outside of the parentheses, you can distribute out, right? Because multiplication is groups of. And so you could add this together and do 3 groups of 9. It's hopefully just a review. Hopefully you know this if you got into 7th grade honors or math 1. And so 3 times 9 would be 7. 27. You could also use your distributive property and do 3 groups of 4 and then add 3 groups of 5 to that. That'd be 12 plus 15. And you're also going to get 27. Because multiplication is repeated addition, it's groups of, you can split those groups up different ways. You could do, if you really wanted to, you could do what? 3, there we go, and do it that way if you wanted to, and split that 4 groups into something even smaller. So then you could have 6 plus 6 is 12, plus 15 would be 27. So you are distributing or giving away. And you learned about this all the way back in 3rd grade, because you could do 2 factors without really knowing your multiplication facts or having to know a strategy to do this. So you could, split this apart into 20 plus 4, and then you could multiply that times 10 plus 3, and then you could simply distribute them out. So I'm going to leave this one alone and come down here, because this is one of the things you're going to have to be able to do. So for this one, 4 plus 5 times, okay, 2 plus 6, really what you're saying is 9 times 8, and your answer is going to be 72. But you split the 9 groups up, and then you split the 8 groups up. So when by the way, this would be a binomial, because there's 2 terms here, times another binomial, because 2 terms here. Well, you have to distribute each number out to the other number in the parentheses. So if you start here, you have to distribute the 4 times the 2, and then do the 4 times the 6, right? So 4 times 2 would be 8, plus 4 times 6 would be 24. But then you also have to do the same thing with the second number, because you weren't multiplying 4 times 8, you're multiplying 9 times 8. So now you do the inner number, okay, and you could do 5 times 2 would be 10, and then 5 times 6 would be 30. Okay, and then you'd add them all together, and when you combine those, you are going to get 72. And again, because it's repeated addition, when you split the groups up, you have to add those groups back together. You have to combine your like terms. And so we are taking something that you learned about in 3rd grade, okay, and then reviewed hopefully in your linear equation playlist, and now we're taking it, instead of a monomial times a binomial, we're doing a binomial times a binomial. So let's take a look at an I do problem, okay? Because now we're going to be introducing variables, and this is why it's important you know what the exponents are. Now, when you're multiplying variables, you don't know what those are, right? So if I'm going to distribute 4x squared, okay, times 3y minus 8, I don't know what this is, right? I broke it apart, but I know I'm doing repeated addition. So you're going to multiply the coefficients. 4 times 3 is 12, and then the x squared and the y were not like terms, so you're not going to add them together. You're simply just going to write them down next to each other. So 4x squared times 3y would give you an answer of 12x squared times y. Minus, because you keep a sign, and you're going to distribute that out, coefficient times your constant would be 32. This did not have a variable, so your variable is going to stay the same, and that would be x squared. And this is how you would simplify or distribute a monomial times a binomial. Now, you'd want to combine like terms if you can, but because this is x squared y and this is just x squared, you can no longer combine them. When you multiplied the x squared times the y, you brought this together and made a new term of 12x squared times y. This is only 32x squared, which means your variables don't match up. You can't add them together. So same thing we just did on the last page. If it's a binomial, now we're just adding variables. So what you need to do, okay, is you need to distribute the 4x to each of the terms. Okay, and your second number, let me just undo that. Get my pen back out. There we go. Okay, you got to distribute out. So again, when you're multiplying variables, you multiply the coefficients, and then the variables power rule. Okay, you just add them together. So 4 times 3 is 12, and then the x and the y are not the same, so you're just going to write down xy, okay, plus 4 times 8 is 32, and you leave the variable as an x, okay. Now you have to do the second number. And one way to remember this, if you're doing a binomial times a binomial, this is what I learned in school, FOIL. You do first, okay, outer, because these are the outer numbers, then you do the inner numbers now, okay. So 2y times 3y. Now, this is where you have to understand what we were talking about with the exponents. If 2y is really raised to the first power, right? You just don't write the 1 if it's not there. You just assume it's there. So our power rule, sorry, not the power rule, the product rule of our exponents that we just learned in our last lesson tells us we're going to add the exponents together. So we multiply the coefficients. That's going to be 2 times 3, which is 6. And then it's going to be y squared, okay, because we had to add, because these are the same variable, okay, you have to add those together. And then last in our FOIL would be 2y times 8, which would be, well, that'd be subtraction. Let me just erase that. There we go. Oh, there we go. It's positive 2y times negative 8. So this would be minus 16. I was looking at the wrong numbers. And then y. So then if you could, you would simplify and combine any like terms. But again, here we have an xy, we have an x, we have a y squared, and just a y. So we can't combine any of those because they're not the same term. So our answer to this would be 12xy plus 32x plus 6y squared minus 16y. Let's take a look at a we do problem. Let's add these in your notes. So we're going to do a binomial times a binomial, okay, which means we can follow our steps of FOIL if that helps you remember. So our first term is 4x squared times y, and we're going to be multiplying that times 3y squared. So we multiply our coefficient. That's going to be 12. We don't have any x's in our second term, so we're just going to add x squared. We now, though, are multiplying a y and a y squared, which means we have to do our power rule, and we would add those together to make y cubed. All right. Then we're going to multiply that times 8, subtracting. So 4 times 8 is 32. There was no variables here, which means we just leave our variables the same. And so that's going to be 32x squared times y. Now we have to do, we just did the first and last. Now we need to do our inner, sorry, we just did these two. So 2y times 3y squared. Again, multiply the coefficient, that's 6. And then the product rule tells us we have to add the exponents together. So that's going to be 6y cubed. There you go. Minus, okay, because we're multiplying by negative 8, 2 times 8 is 16, and the y stays the same. Now, none of these are the same variable, so we can't group any of them together. So when you distribute it out and you multiplied your binomial times binomial, you got 12x squared times y cubed minus 32x squared y plus 6y cubed minus 16y. Now we're going to have a lot of fun in this next one. So I need to erase this. So if you don't have this, you can pause the video. But I need a lot of room for this. So let's just erase that over there. By the way, if I got any of these wrong, please feel free to call me, email me, and let me know. And I'm going to just move this right here, put this up here, okay? And so basically, again, what you're doing is you're just using your distributive property and then using your product rule with your exponents if you need it. So here we have a trinomial, which means every part of this number, okay, this group that's in parentheses, needs to be multiplied by the other numbers, right? So if we're doing let's say 200 plus 20 plus 1, because we wanted to do 221 times 4, right? We'd split that apart, and then we multiply by 4, and each of these numbers would have to be multiplied times 4. If it was times 44, we'd have to do 40 plus 4, and we'd have to have 200 groups of 40, 200 groups of 4, okay? And this goes back all the way to when you learned how to do partial products multiplication and your box method. It was all preparing you for algebra, right? Taking groups of and thinking about multiplication as groups of. So let's get started. We have to do 4x times 3y, and then 4x times negative 8. So 4 times 3 is 12, xy minus 32x. Now we have to do 2y times 3y and 2y times negative 8. So 2y times 3y again would be 6y squared minus 16y, okay? And then the last one, let me get a different color so you can kind of see. We're going to have negative 4 times 3y, so that's going to be negative 12y, and then negative 4 times negative 8 is going to be a positive 32. All right, so now we do have some like terms. We have negative 16y and 12y, so we need to combine our like terms just like you normally would, and so we're going to have 12xy minus 32x plus 6y squared minus 28y plus 32, and this would be simplified my answer when I was multiplying this trinomial times this binomial. So let's do one you-try problem, and then we're going to leave the challenge zone alone right now because this lesson's getting a little bit long, and I know. But if you want to try it, you can go ahead and do it, and then just kind of check your work, or you can come see me during our open office hours, and we can go over it together. But go ahead and pause it, do the you-try, and then push play. So hopefully you just paused it. And so this is a binomial times a binomial, which means I can follow my FOIL rule. Again, that's just help you something to remember. So I know x squared times 6x squared would be 6x to the 4th power, okay, because again, the product rule. And then x squared times 2 would be plus 2x squared. Then I'm going to do 2y times x squared, so 2y x squared. Now typically actually they would probably reverse this and just kind of follow a math convention, a rule that when you're writing them, you write the one with the highest power first. So really that's going to be 2x squared times y. Doesn't really matter, just a math convention that they follow, okay? And then plus 4y, because I'd have to do my last one. And this is, we don't have any like terms, so this is what your simplified answer would be. Now, this is something that was told me that they want you guys to work on, so go ahead and try your IXL. If you have any questions, bring them to the open office hours, and we'll go over it. If you want to try the you-try problem, I will scroll down, you can pause it, and then bring that, and we can go over it together if you want. But again, you just have to multiply each part by the part in the other group. All right? Have fun. Enjoy your math. If you have questions, bring them to open office hours. I'd love to help you out.